What does Montessori mean?
Dr. Maria Montessori discovered that children learn best when we give them choices. You know what, tomorrow's Tuesday, and as per your meal plan, we're supposed to be having upma, but would you like upma or poha? Simple as that, giving two choices. It can really start at birth. Children possess powers as adults we just don't have. Myth is that it's really expensive. That's not necessary. If your child is taking a toy and not working with it the way you like, it's your duty as an adult to pacify yourself instead of putting that burden on the child to work with it exactly how you would like them to do. I'm not saying make a room for your child, dedicate a corner involving children in kitchen work, just making a salad, just soaking grains, making a dosa. These are all Montessori concepts.
If your child is older, can you still do the Montessori way? They're doing Montessori at home, but then at school it's different. Do kids get confused? Hey parents, welcome to another episode of the Modern Indian Parent Podcast, a podcast that is redefining parenting in Indian families. I'm Sanchita Daswani, a pediatric nutritionist, and every week we bring you episodes to help you own your modern parenting choices, even if Nani and Dadi don't agree with them. I want to ask all the parents out there, have you heard about Montessori? Is it something that you heard about, but you want to know a little bit more, but you're not sure where to start, or it seems a bit daunting with all the videos on Instagram? Well, guess what? Today with us, we are so lucky to have Ankita Chandak, who is a certified Montessori educator, and she's a positive parenting coach, and she has worked with over 1,000 parents, helping them foster a deeper connection with their children and helping them lead a child-led life, which is what Montessori is all about. And today she's going to be joining us on the podcast to answer all our questions about Montessori, to help you get that confidence if you would like to implement Montessori with your child. So let us welcome Ankita. Welcome, Ankita, to the Modern Indian Parent Podcast. Thank you so much for being here today. How are you doing?
Thank you so much, Sanchita, for having me. I'm doing great and absolutely love your podcast.
Thank you so much. And, I've been following you for a while on Instagram, and I must say, I really appreciate the work you do. And I must say, you have a very calming sense when you post, because I think for a lot of us parents, when we open Instagram, it can also be a very scary place because there's so much information. But I think the information you share is very easy to comprehend, easy to implement. And I also like that. I love seeing that you take a lot of time for yourself in terms of self-care. And I know you take your holidays with your family. So it's really, really nice to see that, moms can, I know it's hard to say balance, but we're able to find the time for both in a way. And, just to get us started, could you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got into Montessori?
Thank you so much for all your kind words. So how I got into Montessori is quite a story. I had been married for, I think, 4 years at that point. I had actually stopped working with the corporate that I was working with because of distance. And I was trying to figure out, what I'm going to do in this world. And in that discovery phase is when I picked up a book by Maria Montessori. And the name of the book is The Secret of Childhood. And it took me about a week to read that book. And my brother had just delivered a baby, so I could easily relate everything that was mentioned in the book. And I think it was an eye-opener for me. And the moment I put down the book, it was an aha moment saying, I'm going to be a Montessori educator. That is how my journey began, and then I joined my Montessori course. After that, I worked in schools, and I really wanted to do it right. I really wanted to experience it before I go ahead and have my own child. And I think over a period of time, Aishka was born, and then, of course, COVID happened, and then Instagram took over. So I never got back to working with schools, but there's a little bit of a gap that I noticed in the parent-teacher meetings that I had in school. I figured out that there is a little mismatch in what parents think about their children, the perception, and who the child truly is and how the child functions in school. So I realized there's a bit of a disconnect, and I really wanted to be the person or one of the people in the world to bridge that gap. Connect the pieces is what I would say. And I think I'm able to do that bit by bit, little by little through my page, through the work I do, through the workshops. And it's very satisfying is what I would say.
Yeah, and that's so nice because so many times, so many of us, once we have kids and we're going through it, we're like, I wish we had done this. Like that happened with me and child nutrition. After my kids became picky eaters, I was like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? And then I started looking back and now I help parents. But it's so nice that you started that journey from early on and you had that interest as well. So you could also follow these things with your daughter. Montessori, I think when you hear it, I think some parents get a bit nervous because it's a lot and we don't know where to start, how to start. So could you explain to us first, what does Montessori even mean? Is it a new concept? Is it old?
So Montessori is not new. It's been there for 100 years, right? Dr. Maria Montessori started it 100 years ago in her own journey with children. She discovered that children learn best when we give them choices, when we let them practically discover their interests and we follow the lead instead of becoming teachers in a very traditional manner. If we can become guides and nurture them and help them realize their own potential, help them work with whatever they naturally like and follow their course of development rather than asking them or expecting them to do what we are doing. That is how the journey of Montessori began. And honestly, it's very fresh even after 100 years. And it's very interesting that the concepts that were valid 100 years ago all across the world still work so beautifully in today's age. I think that's the beauty of Montessori. It's a method that's here to stay because it follows the lead of the child.
And why do you feel that following the lead of the child is so important compared to just because we would think that, okay, we are teachers, we are adults, we know everything and we should kind of, put that direction onto kids. So why is this way so important to follow the child?
So, follow the child is a very beautiful concept. Maria Montessori, in her work, realized that when children are able to follow their own interests, they learn beautifully. She also discovered that children have an absorbent mind. They are like sponges, right? They don't need to be taught in a very traditional manner. Just by being in the environment, they learn very beautifully. If you put a child in Italy and the child has no background of the knowledge, the child will still be able to learn Italian just by being in the environment. So following the lead of the child is important because children possess powers that as adults we just don't have. It's really interesting to also understand that in today's world or in any other era that we live in, it's important that we are able to nurture the inner abilities that the child already possesses and not look at ourselves as somebody superior and be like, you know what, I'm the adult, I'm going to teach you, you're going to do what I like, I want you to learn math, I want you to learn your words and your phonics, but what the child deep down really feels like doing. So if you notice, Sanchita, children are naturally interested in all the activities we do at home. Children don't really want to sit in one place and do the activities we want them to do. They want to cook, they want to clean, they're very happy to be with a broom or a mop cloth and just imitate the adults around them. So just allowing that child to explore that interest can be really powerful because the child is developing will, the child is developing a sense of, I can do it myself. And that is really powerful. That's basically a life skill that the child needs to have. Yeah.
And it's so interesting because in the last few podcasts, we've had like someone who's spoken to us about speech, about phonics, and about different skills that kids need. And even we had someone who arranges travel for moms and kids. And exactly what you said, that we need to give our kids that space because the best way they learn is by just being in the environment, by hearing you talk, by watching those movements, and even traveling with them to any environment. So I think that's what Montessori kind of falls back on, is trusting the child. So if you could say, what is the key ideas of Montessori? I know you mentioned that it is about following the lead of the child, but are there any other key aspects of Montessori?
So there are three key aspects of Montessori. The first is a prepared environment. The child needs to be in an environment which is apt for the child, which has been made very beautifully, keeping the child in mind. And with a very, Maria Montessori says, and this is one of my mentors also who said this, that a child's space is created with a lot of humility and love. The second thing is prepared materials. What we are offering to the child in terms of materials, hands-on learning, which is the core of Montessori, because children learn through senses. They learn by touching, feeling. When they get that sensory input to the brain, that's how they learn. So are the materials in the environment, no matter what the age of the child is it apt enough? And the final key and the missing link is what I would say is the prepared adult. Is the adult aware of the needs of the child? See, as parents, I know we do the best. We do our best as parents to make sure they're fed well, to ensure they're clothed well, to ensure they're sleeping well. But are we nurturing the mental abilities of the child? Are we giving enough food to the brain? Are we offering choices? Are we taking a step back and taking the role of a guide and not as a superior adult? Are we giving the same respect to the child that is given to an adult? Most of the times, the way some adults speak to the child is amazing because they would never speak to an adult like that. So, what about the respect that the child deserves? So, it's about the three core things, like I said: prepared adult, prepared materials, prepared environment. And the final piece is freedom with limitations. So, a lot of people think Montessori children are free to do whatever they like. They're free to do whatever they like within a framework. There's freedom that comes with responsibility, and there's freedom that comes with limitations.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and I think it really sums it up well. And I think one thing that really stuck to me is about the parent, because we've had a certain way of growing up. So even for food, we've been spoon fed, and now we're trying to do baby led weaning, but a lot of stuff is in the back of our mind. So for a parent who really wants to embark on this Montessori journey, I think first it's so important for us to take that time and also agree, and not just do it because everyone's doing it or it's the new way, but for us to also kind of let go of the way we were brought up and really accept that. So how would you maybe guide a parent who wants to start but also is not used to this way? And because I'm sure there'll be a lot of hesitations.
Yeah, I would say the moment you know you're expecting, if you want to start, then start picking up, start reading. In fact, I've created this entire course, which is a newborn course, which is to be done during pregnancy, because once the baby comes, no one's going to have any time to do any courses, right? So you do it during pregnancy and decide that this is the kind of parent I want to be. I think it's very important for us as parents to first of all go and learn a little bit. Parenting wasn't taught to us. Now, in this generation, we are learning parenting. It wasn't taught to our parents, right? And now that we know better, we must do better. We cannot go and blame our parents that, you didn't do all of this and then I was raised differently, but they didn't know it. So for a parent to now start Montessori, it can really start at birth. It can start the moment the child is born. It can start the moment the child comes into the house by really respecting the needs of the child, number one, by communicating to the child, even a newborn, when we are holding them, picking them up. It's always better to inform them before doing something to them. It's always better to tell them before passing them on to another human being, to understand that this child is a whole human being and deserves the same respect that any other person would. I often tell this to my parents: would you take an adult and pass them on to another person without saying anything, or pull them and bring them? You wouldn't, right? But then we do it with the child so many times. So just to become a little conscious of, I was parented that way, but I'm going to be this kind of parent. Anybody can follow Montessori at home by focusing on life skills, by giving choices, by giving freedom with limitations. The concepts can always be applied at home. In fact, a child does not even have to go to a Montessori school. Montessori at home can be done even if a child is studying in a kindergarten, let's say.
Like what you said about for a newborn, I think the best way to also start is just communicating with them that, okay, so do you mean like we'll say like, okay, now you're going to have your milk. Okay, we're going to start with the massage now.
Yes.
Kind of enacting
respectful
what
communication.
is happening.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So that's actually very simple. And I like that because it's a simple start, simple way to just be like, okay, let's communicate about that. Why is Montessori sometimes looked down upon? Why is sometimes people like, I'm sure there's for everything, even baby led weaning and all of that. Why is there criticism right now for Montessori?
So Montessori children don't write very early on. Okay, we believe that there will be an explosion of reading, an explosion of writing. So we really wait. We work on a lot of pre-writing skills and making the hand muscles really strong, the wrist strong. So a pencil is typically given to a child in a Montessori anywhere around 4.5. And that's already late according to parents, right? But in so many countries, children are not holding pencils even till the age of 6. So we focus on what the child's need is from 2 to 3 and 3 to 4. And that really is not being made to write and learn ABCD. The child is focusing on life skills. And sometimes parents also feel scared about offering so many choices. What if this child then does not get disciplined? But offering choice when you're allowed to make your own choice as a human being of what you want to eat. As an adult, you make your choices, what you want to eat, what you want to wear, where you want to go. Children also can work within the framework, but then of course, a parent needs to know how to offer those choices. To a newborn, a choice is going to be, do you want to read this book or this book? And you will see that a newborn will move their head and tell you. And open-ended choices don't work for small children. So I think it's all about understanding and learning. So I think one of the reasons Montessori does not work is the writing, right? Another myth is that it's really expensive and I will have to buy a whole lot of wooden toys. But that's not necessary. Wooden toys, of course, it's because it's natural material and children are learning through their senses. We don't want to be giving them plastic, overstimulating, battery operated toys, but we also don't want to buy the entire world and put it in their room.
I want to talk a little bit about the tools you need for Montessori. So I know you mentioned the wooden toys, and also I remember with my kids, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then I saw a picture of a shelf with like 4 toys. And I was like, how is this possible? Like, how can a child only play with 4 toys and be okay with it? And I was like a bit underwhelmed with it. And I know that Montessori is about finding different ways to use it, using your imagination. But can you clarify that for us? That it seems like it's a less is more kind of
Yeah, yeah.
vibe. Is that
In
what it is?
Montessori, less is more. So it's really about having a simple environment for the child where there are some tools and some toys that are age appropriate and available to the child. Have you seen children with these big laundry baskets? They put their all the toys are on the floor, and then the child is not able to concentrate or choose. So we decide that, okay, these are the materials I'm going to put out on my shelf for this particular week or for 10 days. I'm going to keep the materials that my child is working with, and the ones that my child is not interested in, I'm going to put it away and I'm going to rotate that with something else. But I've seen often people do the opposite. Whatever the child is interested in and has worked with a lot, they put it inside. But that was of your child's interest. So it's really confusing. Yeah. But also understanding that a child who is 1 year old only needs 4 to 5 books and they need repetition. So why we leave the same toys on the shelf is also because children need to master it. And for mastery, they need multiple repetitions. And with multiple repetitions comes concentration. So when a child is doing the same activity over and over again, and they're completely engrossed in it, there will be a point where the child has figured it all out and there will be a beautiful smile on the child's face. And that is the result of repetition and concentration, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm just thinking about the amount of toys I have in my house, and I'm like, oh, because I
Yeah.
kind of do that. Like I have a box, and I'm like, here, guys, and I feel like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
giving them that freedom to choose everything. But I think that importance of that repetition to build that skill and that
Yeah.
concentration is what happens when you have less stuff.
Yes.
And I think a lot of the Montessori toys are also open-ended toys, right? Like they're things that you can do few things with.
So let me tell you about that. Open-ended and pretend play are not really part of Montessori. Having said that, we only show the child how you're supposed to work with it. In fact, every material in a classroom has a very well-defined objective. You know, like if you've seen those cylinder blocks, the objective is that the child is working on their pincer grasp, right? It's a very well-defined objective for every material. But at home, for parents following Montessori at home, you can put the toys, you can show the child how to work with it and really get out of the way. If your child is interested in pretend play, your child does not need a whole elaborate pretend play kit. Your child will just take a block or a duster or a chalk and with their own imagination convert it into whatever they like. Yeah. So we don't really correct and overcorrect the child saying this is not how you're supposed to work with, this is the point of the material, you're working with it all wrong. We give them the space and time to explore it. Having said that, we take a mental note. Suppose a child has been tracing a sound and saying it's b instead of a. I'm going to make a mental note and then tomorrow I'm going to again show it to the child. So teach by teaching, not by correction. Yeah. So it's very observation based. I'm just going to observe how my child is working with it, how my child is really engrossing. What is my child learning out of this? I'm just going to sit back and because I don't want to be the parent who's interrupting my child again and again and breaking their concentration. Yeah.
Wow, that's very powerful. And I'm just thinking, like, I think if you can do that, it's amazing. But I think most of us parents are fidgety. Like we'll be like, no, 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 do it this way. No, 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 do it that way. But I like that you're saying that don't do it correct right away, but take those learnings and work on it the next day to help your child so they have that space.
100%. And another thing, again, that's when you circle back to follow your child. If your child is taking a toy and not working with it the way you like, it's your duty as an adult to pacify yourself instead of putting that burden on the child to work with it exactly how you would like them to do.
I think the biggest issue that people have with Montessori is not the child, it's your own issue, to be honest, because it's us coming in the way all the time. It's us. And I think, I've noticed this also, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've noticed this with my practice when I'm guiding parents on baby led weaning. It's not what the baby does. I feel like I'm coaching the parents to be okay that the child didn't eat, to be okay that he's just playing with the sense, like using his senses to interact with the food. I have to coach the parents to have that mental stability so the child can build a good relationship with food. So I'm feeling that connection, same kind of with Montessori as well, right?
Yeah. So baby-led weaning is what we really believe in as Montessorians also. The only difference is instead of a high chair where the child is basically kind of fixed in a spot, movement is a very big part of Montessori. So in Montessori, there's a weaning table and chair. So when the child is done, the child can walk away. At 6 months or 7 months, whenever they're ready, whenever they start sitting, it's the weaning table and chair that's used instead of a high chair. But otherwise, the concept is the same. Give it to the child, let the child explore it with their senses, and then the child is going to eat the food, and we have to respect the choice. Go as per the pace of your child. Like you said, it's the issues with parents, which is why it's called parenting. It's not called childing, is what I read somewhere, and it made a lot of
That's
sense.
True. Yeah. Oh my God, that's so correct. Because I guess, that's what you mean. That restriction is happening with the high chair, so they're not free. But to be honest, this all sounds amazing, and I can't, like, I keep saying, like, I tell my husband, I think we need to have another kid just so I can do everything differently. Everything. And he's like, listen, that can't be the only reason, but okay, so now I can help other parents. It's fine. But what I want to ask you is that, because it does sound a little bit too good to be true. In a way, it sounds like the ideal world. Okay, you have your limitations, boundaries, you prep. Is Montessori for every child?
I think more than every child, a parent has to ask if Montessori is for them. Are they okay with giving so much to the child in terms of choices, in terms of freedom? The result can be beautiful. It can help your child become great in adaptability. Your child can adapt really well because your child is in a mixed age environment. Talking about school, you have to be okay with the fact that your child will pick up the pencil late. You have to be okay with the fact that there are days where your child is going to go to school and only read books and come back. You have to be okay with the fact that your child may want to work on their own for hours because they're so busy concentrating on something. So I would really ask the parent, and I really don't see an issue with any board. I don't criticize any board. I really feel if a child is really into open-ended, they can do Waldorf. If the child really likes structure and likes direction, then they do kindergarten. If a child has a strong willpower and the child wants to explore themselves and really take their own journey, be in a mixed age group, a child is super social, because Montessori children are just talking all the time. It's super chaotic. Anybody walking into a classroom will be like, what is going on? I went to a Montessori school yesterday after so many days and I had to shoot there, and the videographer was like, when will this settle down? And I'm like, this is settled. So you have to be okay with it. With Montessori children, they are in a mixed age group of 2.5 to 6 years, and some of them find it really comfortable to interact with the older ones. So I really feel the parent has to take the call, but the result of Montessori is really beautiful. It's children who are completely centered. They have strong willpower. They're able to make their choices. They're able to ask for help. They're able to say no. And if I may add, when they're in a mixed age environment, a 3-year-old is learning from a 6-year-old. A 6-year-old is already teaching a 4 and a 3-year-old. So they often consider themselves as little guides. But then, of course, that's also giving them the power back. Are you okay as a parent to hand over that power back?
Yeah. Now that you're talking about it, I want to ask you, because of course there's a lot of people listening to this podcast. They live in joint families, and even if they want to do the Montessori way, the family might not agree. How do you navigate that situation?
I think it's really important, if you live in a joint family, to have a conversation with them about the kind of parent you want to be, the way you want to raise your child. Now, I understand that may not be possible for some families at all. In that case, Don't label that this is the method I'm going to follow. Just become the role model, become the parent that you really aspire to be. Offer choices to your child. Let your child pick and choose their toys. Let your child pick up a broom and clean the house. Treat your child with respect. When they see the results of that, they're going to follow through.
Same with baby led weaning. So I tell my clients, I said, you have to be that role model. You will have to take that time to be there at every meal. And once once the grandparents see the child eating themselves, they'll be like, oh wow, like it was all worth it. Then they get it in the long run. So and the other question, which is for me, is if you're doing Montessori at home, you said they don't need to go necessarily to a Montessori school. And I know that, like, for example, in Hong Kong, there is one Montessori school, but again, the school is very expensive. It's also very far. So how do you balance? Because if they're doing Montessori at home, but then at school it's different, do kids get confused?
I would say it's always better to follow Montessori in terms of concepts at home, which basically means setting up a small environment, books in a basket at the child's height, a chalky on the floor where the child can work, a mat where the child considers it to be their workspace, toys which are hands-on and not overstimulating, not too much plastic. I mean, all of this can be done no matter where your child studies in terms of school. Giving the child choices, allowing the child to be a part of household chores, giving them freedom with limitations, all of this the parent can do. Now, coming to the point where if the child is going to a kindergarten school and then you're following Montessori at home, conceptually it's going to be okay. But what happens in a kindergarten is that they learn, let's say, technical stuff, right? For phonics, they first learn ABCD. Then they learn a, b, k, d, right? So you will have to now hold that Montessorian in you back and be like, I will have to go with the pace of school and not confuse my child. So it's really about finding that balance. But the first step is education. A parent has to educate themselves. And today there are books, there are courses. It really depends on the parent how much time they are willing to invest in learning parenting.
And I think another big thing that's important is community. Because, for example, if I want to raise a child the Montessori way, I would need that support. I would need other people to do it so I don't feel alone. Because that's another thing. So, luckily, today we have Instagram, we have educators like you that have courses and, are creating communities as well. So, I think social media has helped. But I feel like that would also be important to have someone who's also doing it the same way, right?
That really helps. I mean, there are a lot of times where Montessori parents themselves are like, you know what, in other schools, children are doing so much more, and our children are still eating on their own. They're cleaning the house. They want to paint the floors. They just want to scribble all day with a chalk on the floor. Then parents whose children have passed out of the Montessori will then come and be like, yeah, but children will learn everything else anyway. What's the point of teaching the child how to write at 3 when your child can easily pick that up at 5 and does not need as much repetition? As I think as a family or as a community, what are we spending time on? Are we spending time on teaching them the skills that they only need for academics, or are we teaching them life skills? So their community plays a big role, and it creates a sense of validation for parents saying that I'm not alone in this, and my child will also learn the rest of the stuff that's needed. Because nowadays there's grade 1 admission tests and this and that, and the child needs to know certain things that can be overwhelming. So community is a must. Everybody needs to find their tribe before you become a mom, I would say. But it helps to have community for sure. I think the first 7 years, the best gift a parent can give to their child is their time. They will not need us much. They will not need us the way they do after they're 7 years old. So I think the first 7 years is what they need from us, where their core foundations are building, where their personality is building, where their beliefs are building. And you don't want them to pick up all those things from other people. You want to be able to be there when they're learning, when they're developing these notions about the world, when they're developing belief, when they know that this is how my parents treated me and spoke to me, and this is how respectful I'm supposed to be with other people. And this is also where I draw my boundary, wherein someone is not being respectful. I really know that's not normal. Also, giving children the space to adapt, to grow, to find their own interests, to nurture it, I think it's just beautiful.
Yeah, I think learning from your kids in the first few years is the beauty.
Absolutely. They're the best teachers.
Of it. Yeah. So thank you so much for all of that. My last question to you is that if you are a mom like me who's like dwelled a little into Montessori and then got nervous and scared, but after listening to this podcast, I feel so much reassured that it is possible. So if your child is older,
Yeah.
can you still do the Montessori way? How would you suggest if a child's 4 or 5? How can we even get into it?
Start by creating, like I said, the first three things, like prepared environment. I'm not saying make a room for your child, dedicate a corner with the child's materials, the child's things, maybe just a piece of furniture where the child can sit and work, and they know that that's their zone. Whenever children are doing anything, we call them work because they're focusing, they're concentrating. That's the child's zone. So just creating that, giving them books of their choices or what they need for their age. That would be the prepared environment bit and prepared material bit. And then, of course, the prepared adult. So you can just start by giving them choices. Like I'm sure you know, like how you make meal plans. You know what, tomorrow's Tuesday, and as for your meal plan, we're supposed to be having upma, but would you like upma or poha? Simple as that, giving two choices. And when your children grow older, 6 years old, you can even give them three options. And then often you can also ask them to come up with, okay, now it's the time. I trust you to make a decision. I know you're not going to be choosing chocolates for breakfast. So what would you like to have? Kind of giving them a little bit more responsibility. Another thing that I would say for 4 to 5 year olds are have some chores in the house that they need to do. And if they don't do it, it's not done. And it can be a very simple task, like filling all the water bottles in the house. It can just be folding your blanket. If it's not done, it's not done. You're going to have to do it at some point. Again, involving children in kitchen work, just making a salad, just soaking grains, making a dosa, and then enjoying that as a family. These are all Montessori concepts, and so much of those align with baby-led weaning.
Amazing. No, that actually is very inspiring, and I'm very motivated. Allow my kids to make these choices. And thank you so much for being here. If you could just let the viewers know a little bit about the courses you offer, and if you would be able to guide them for getting into the Montessori way.
So I think, like I said, the journey to become a prepared parent starts from pregnancy. So there is a pregnancy course which takes care of the first 6 months in terms of the physical, the mental needs of the child, in terms of what the child needs the moment they're born. They really need you, your heartbeat, skin to skin, a lot of all of that. Brain development is at its peak in the first year. If anybody wants to start Montessori at home and their child is 1 year to 2.5 years, there's a program for that. And then there's a program to help your child start with art, and art starts at 6 months. The moment you can give them food is when, food is basically the first form of art that children do when they trace their hands through the food and through curd or yogurt and all of that. So art, birth to 3 art. And I'm also running a music and movement development program in Bangalore in person. And I also do that online, and there are parenting courses on music also. Another beautiful course I have for parents who have children from birth to typically, I think from 1 to 4 or 5 is the temperament course, because tantrums is something parents really struggle with. So understanding your child's temperament, which typically is going to stay the same throughout the child's life, can really give you practical tools to really, really work with your child and work in terms of work with them and not against them. So there are all of these courses, a lot of help available. And I can't wait to work with the parents that come to me through this beautiful podcast.
Yes. No, thank you so much for sharing all of that. We're going to link the details below as well. So everyone out there, I think this has been such an insightful episode all about Montessori and just following our child and just enjoying the moment with them and setting up that right structure. And again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. You guys are doing such great work, bringing out such interesting episodes. And I'm sure you guys are going to be one of the best podcasts that there is for parenting, and all the best to both of you.
Thank you. Thank you.